What if I told you the greatest scientist of the 20th century didn't just revolutionize physics, but also had profound thoughts on war, education, religion, and the meaning of life? Today on Zuzu, the book reader, we dive into The World as I See It by Albert Einstein, a rare glimpse into the heart and mind of a genius who shaped modern science and questioned everything from politics to God. Here's what you'll take away from this book: why Einstein believed simplicity was the secret to a meaningful life, how he balanced scientific progress with moral responsibility, his candid thoughts on God, religion, and human freedom. This book will leave you questioning not just what you know, but why you know it. Let's begin. Chapter 1: The World as I See It. In this opening section, Einstein gives us an intimate tour of his worldview. He begins by revealing his motivations, not for fame or money, but for a humble desire to understand the world and help humanity. He stresses the importance of individuality and the inner voice of conscience as guiding principles in life. Einstein describes his detachment from material possessions and personal ambitions. To him, life's true purpose is found in serving others and exploring truth, beauty, and goodness. He deeply respects the mysterious. He calls it the source of all true art and science. This awe of the universe's complexity fuels his work as a physicist, and he insists that curiosity is more important than formal education. He also reflects on his Jewish identity, not in terms of religion but culture and community, and his role as a citizen of the world, detached from nationalism. Einstein calls for world peace and international cooperation, especially after witnessing the devastation of World War I. He warns against blind patriotism and instead advocates for unity and collective responsibility. This chapter also highlights his skepticism about authority. He champions the value of critical thinking and the independence of intellectual life, particularly in universities. He ends by underscoring how gratitude, curiosity, and compassion should guide a well-lived life. What do you think? Can you live a life guided by curiosity over competition? Before we dive into the next section, here's something special for all future thinkers, builders, and creators watching this. Imagine making your first $10,000 online by launching your own business with proven systems, no experience required. Introducing Entrepreneur's Launch Kit, a practical guide to making your first $10,000. This is your all-in-one guide with 11 powerful blueprints. Launch your digital product biz in 7 days. Faceless YouTube, $1,000 a month in 30 days. Start your AI marketing agency for $0. Get 5 high-ticket clients in 14 days. Design like a pro with Canva in 2 hours. Build your personal brand in 7 days. Master ChatGPT with 100 prompts in 7 days. Land your first freelance client in 48 hours. Grow to 10K. Instagram followers in 30 days. Reach 100K. YouTube subscribers in 90 days. Start a profitable Etsy shop in 7 days. People are using these exact templates to go from $0 to $10,000 a month, and you can too. Get it here. https://Zuzu 2025.gumroad.com/l/entrepreneurs launch kit. It's in the description, bio, and pinned comment. Your new business starts today. Chapter 2: Politics and Pacifism. This section reveals Einstein's unwavering stance against war and blind nationalism. He begins by stressing the devastating consequences of militarism, which he calls one of the most disgraceful diseases of civilization. To Einstein, war is not just tragic, it's irrational. He despises how patriotism is twisted into a justification for violence, calling it a pestilent nonsense. Rather than glorify nations, he believes in fostering global unity. Einstein's vision of peace isn't just wishful thinking, it's built on responsibility. He argues that people must stand up against systems that breed violence and injustice. This includes opposing conscription and speaking out when governments overreach. True pacifism, to Einstein, isn't passive. It's active resistance to systems that threaten humanity. He believed this so deeply that during World War I, he was one of the few intellectuals in Germany to publicly oppose the war. He speaks openly about the need for a supranational organization to prevent wars, a precursor to what we now know as the United Nations. Nations acting independently, he says, will always prioritize power over peace. Only global cooperation can prevent catastrophe. This chapter also includes letters and speeches where Einstein appeals to young people. He encourages them not to follow orders blindly, but to use reason and conscience. He emphasizes that no one, no government, no ideology should be allowed to dictate what is morally right or wrong. That responsibility lies within the individual. Einstein's tone here is firm but hopeful. He believes humanity is capable of evolving beyond war, but only if we shed fear, question authority, and act with compassion. What's more courageous, fighting in a war or refusing to fight when everyone expects you to? Chapter 3, Germany, 1933. This chapter is a haunting window into Einstein's personal experience with fascism and exile. In 1933, when Adolf Hitler came to power, Einstein, being Jewish, a pacifist, and a critic of authoritarianism, became an immediate target. He was publicly vilified, his books burned, and his name slandered across Nazi Germany. Einstein didn't just witness the collapse of German democracy, he lived it, and he spoke out forcefully. This chapter contains several of his statements made during his emigration to the United States. He writes with deep sorrow about the betrayal of science, art, and truth by a nation he once admired. What disturbed him most wasn't just the actions of the Nazis, but the silence and complicity of the educated classes. Einstein emphasizes that the downfall of German intellectual life came not from lack of intelligence, but from lack of moral courage. Professors and scientists, he said, were too afraid to speak up, and thus allowed hatred to rise unchecked. He warns the world, do not assume it can't happen where you are. Fascism doesn't begin with bombs. It begins when truth is silenced. Despite being in America, Einstein didn't consider himself safe. He warned that intolerance, racism, and authoritarianism exist everywhere. If left unchallenged, they will take root again. That's why he believed education must teach critical thinking, not obedience. The goal of schooling, he argued, is to prepare independent minds, not loyal citizens. Einstein's heartbreak over Germany is clear, but so is his determination to keep fighting for freedom, for science, for peace. Would you have the courage to speak up if everyone around you was silent? Chapter 4, The Jews. This chapter dives into Einstein's identity as a Jew, not through a religious lens, but through one of heritage, culture, and resilience. He begins by explaining his emotional and spiritual connection to the Jewish people. Though he was not religious in the traditional sense, Einstein was deeply proud of his Jewish roots and his people's long history of survival and contribution to humanity. He writes about the rise of anti-Semitism with pain and urgency. As a prominent Jewish intellectual, he saw how prejudice had become normalized in Europe. But Einstein didn't respond with hatred or fear. He responded with solidarity. He believed that the solution to anti-Semitism was not assimilation, but the strengthening of Jewish identity through education, community, and mutual support. He was an advocate for the Zionist movement, not as a political tool, but as a cultural and spiritual homeland. He didn't see Zionism as a way to escape the world, but as a means to rebuild dignity and unity among Jews. His vision of a Jewish state was not one of walls and armies, but of schools, libraries, and scientific centers, a place where Jewish values of justice, learning, and peace could thrive. Einstein also criticizes Jews who, in an effort to fit in, turn their backs on their heritage. He reminds his readers that pride in one's identity is essential, not just for Jews, but for all oppressed groups. And yet, Einstein was not sectarian. He didn't believe Jews were better than anyone else, only that they deserved the same dignity and rights. He ends with a call for compassion and cooperation between Jews and Arabs, especially in Palestine. Peace, he says, must be built on mutual respect, not domination. How do you preserve your identity while still embracing the world? Chapter 5: Education and the Search for Truth. In this deeply personal and thoughtful section, Einstein explores what education should truly mean. He opens with a simple yet radical idea. Education isn't about memorizing facts. It's about training the mind to think independently. Einstein criticizes systems that emphasize obedience over curiosity. He recalls how, as a student, he struggled in rigid classrooms that stifled original thought. Teachers were more concerned with discipline than inspiration, and he believed that this approach kills creativity. According to Einstein, the purpose of education should be to awaken joy in creative expression and understanding, not just produce well-behaved workers. He also critiques the worship of grades and exams. When students are driven by fear of failure or desire for praise, they lose sight of why knowledge matters. Real education, Einstein argues, should cultivate intrinsic motivation, the desire to understand the world out of love, not reward. Einstein praises teachers who embody humility and passion. He sees them as guides, not dictators. True educators inspire a lifelong hunger for truth by asking better questions rather than offering quick answers. The chapter touches on moral education too. Einstein warns that technical skills without ethics can be dangerous. He insists that education must foster not just intelligence, but character, a sense of justice, empathy, and responsibility to others. He's particularly worried about how modern societies prioritize efficiency and profit over human development. A society that values machines more than minds, he says, loses its soul. Einstein ends with a hopeful message. Every child has genius inside. The role of education is to help it emerge, not crush it. If you were never graded, what would you choose to learn today? Chapter 6: Society and Personality. This section is a powerful reflection on the relationship between the individual and society. Einstein begins by stating that we are all born into a vast network of human effort. Every meal we eat, every tool we use, every idea we understand was made possible by others. Therefore, no one lives or learns alone. However, while society is essential for survival, Einstein warns that it can easily suppress individuality. He fears that as populations grow and systems become more organized, we begin to value conformity over creativity. This, he says, is a dangerous trend. The health of any civilization depends on strong, independent individuals. Einstein highlights that progress in science, art, and ethics has always come from solitary thinkers, not committees. From the first person to make fire to the creators of the Renaissance, it was the free thinker, not the crowd, who moved humanity forward. Society must therefore protect its rebels, not punish them. But Einstein doesn't promote selfish individualism. He believes a person's value comes from how much they contribute to others, not how much they acquire for themselves. He urges a balance: maintain independence of thought, but act with social responsibility. He's also concerned about how mass media and propaganda weaken independent judgment. When people stop questioning, they become tools of power. He says the rise of dictatorships in Europe, like fascism, is proof of what happens when individuals stop thinking for themselves. Einstein's ideal society is one where individuals are free to think and feel, yet deeply connected through empathy and shared values. Do you feel more like a part of society or apart from it? Chapter 7: Religion and Science. In one of the most powerful sections of the book, Einstein unpacks the age-old tension between science and religion, and does so with stunning clarity. He begins by acknowledging that all human actions stem from basic emotions: fear, curiosity, love, and the search for meaning. Religion, he says, began with fear of death, disaster, and the unknown. Ancient people created gods to explain natural events and to feel protected from them. But as societies evolved, religion began reflecting moral values. Instead of gods that needed to be appeased, people began envisioning a God of justice and compassion. The idea of God became more ethical, more abstract, and less rooted in fear. Einstein himself doesn't believe in a personal God who rewards and punishes, but he's far from being an atheist. He speaks passionately of a cosmic religious feeling, a deep awe for the beauty, order, and mystery of the universe. This feeling, he says, is the core of both art and science. It's not about dogma or rituals, it's about reverence for the vastness and interconnectedness of all things. He insists that science and religion do not have to be enemies. Science reveals how things work. Religion gives us purpose and values. Conflict arises only when religion claims authority over science, or when science tries to replace moral meaning. To Einstein, the true scientist is deeply spiritual, not because they believe in miracles, but because they are humbled by the infinite complexity of the universe. He ends by saying that in an age of materialism, the scientist may be the most religious person of all, not because of faith, but because of wonder. Do you think science and spirituality can exist side by side, or do they clash in your worldview? Chapter 8, The Pursuit of Science. In this section, Einstein discusses the very soul of scientific work, and it's not what most people think. He insists that science must be pursued for its own sake, not for material gain, national prestige, or personal fame. True science, he says, is born from a sense of wonder, not ambition. Einstein explains that real scientists don't care about applause. They're driven by an inner passion to discover the laws of nature. It's a spiritual pursuit, a humble quest to understand a universe that's far bigger than us. He compares the joy of discovery to the joy of an artist or a poet. It's not about logic alone, but inspiration and intuition. But he also sounds a warning. When science is reduced to a tool for power, politics, or profit, it becomes dangerous. He had already seen how scientific discoveries could be twisted into weapons, and he feared a future where scientists would be pressured to serve state or corporate interests instead of humanity. Einstein argues that scientists must remain independent thinkers. They should resist propaganda, nationalism, and institutional control. Otherwise, their work loses its purity, and the world loses its compass. He's especially critical of how some governments try to censor science or force it to align with political ideologies. In contrast, he praises institutions and nations that protect academic freedom, like the United States during his early years there. The pursuit of science, he insists, is a moral calling, not just to seek knowledge, but to do so honestly, courageously, and with reverence for the unknown. What drives your curiosity? Grades, money, or the thrill of figuring things out? Chapter 9, Freedom and Responsibility. This chapter is Einstein's heartfelt reflection on liberty, not just as a political idea, but as a foundation of human dignity. He begins by acknowledging a paradox. We all talk about freedom, yet we often don't understand it. Real freedom, Einstein says, is not doing whatever you want, but thinking for yourself even when it's unpopular. He discusses how modern society often trades freedom for comfort. People are tempted to let governments, media, or social trends tell them how to think. But Einstein warns, when people stop questioning, tyranny begins. He speaks from experience. He saw it happen in Nazi Germany, and he feared it could happen anywhere. At the same time, Einstein doesn't believe in total individualism. With freedom comes responsibility. He insists that every person has a duty to fight injustice, protect truth, and use their liberty for the good of others. Freedom without empathy, he says, is just selfishness. He also stresses the importance of freedom in science and education. Without the liberty to question and explore, innovation dies. That's why he admired universities that protected independent thought, even when the world around them demanded obedience. Einstein ends with a hopeful vision, a world where freedom isn't just protected by laws, but nourished by culture, education, and courage. If no one was watching, would you still do what's right, or just what's easy? Chapter 10, American Impressions. Here, Einstein shares his personal observations after arriving in the United States, a nation he would eventually call home. His tone is warm, curious, and thoughtful. He begins by praising America's practicality. He's amazed by the efficiency of daily life. The homes, the tools, the infrastructure, everything, he says, is designed to make work easier and life more comfortable. But more than the technology, what strikes him most is the positive attitude of the people. Americans are friendly, optimistic, and unburdened by the heavy cynicism he often saw in Europe. Einstein appreciates the American spirit of cooperation. People help each other. There's a strong sense of community and volunteerism. He also admires the generosity of wealthy Americans who fund universities, research, and public works, not out of obligation, but a genuine desire to give back. However, he doesn't ignore the flaws. He criticizes prohibition as a misguided law that eroded public trust in government. He also worries about the overwhelming influence of money in American culture, and how economic inequality can still produce social tension, even in a land of opportunity. Einstein is especially concerned that despite America's global power, many Americans remain isolated from world affairs. He urges the U.S. to take a greater role in promoting peace and international cooperation. He ends with gratitude. Despite being exiled from his homeland, he found hope in the openness and intellectual freedom of America, a place where ideas still matter. What do you admire most and question most about your own country? Chapter 11, The Jews and Palestine. In this moving chapter, Einstein deepens his thoughts on Jewish identity and introduces his vision for the future of Palestine, a vision rooted not in power, but in peace and culture. Einstein emphasizes that the Jewish people, long persecuted and scattered, must reclaim their sense of unity and dignity, not through conquest or separation, but through education, culture, and community. He views the rebuilding of Palestine not as a nationalistic military endeavor, but as a spiritual and intellectual home, a cultural rebirth for the Jewish people. He expresses deep admiration for the work being done in Palestine to build schools, universities, and centers of scientific learning. To Einstein, Hebrew University is more than an academic institution. It's a beacon of hope, a place where science, philosophy, and culture can flourish together. But Einstein is clear, he does not envision a Jewish state built on exclusivity or domination. He calls for peaceful coexistence between Jews and Arabs, emphasizing mutual respect and shared progress. His ideal is a society where Jews are not rulers or subjects, but neighbors, working side by side for common prosperity. He also challenges Jews who seek only material success while neglecting their heritage. He urges them to support Palestine not out of guilt or tradition, but out of a higher calling, to help build a society based on justice, learning, and peace. Einstein's words are full of hope and caution. He believes the Jewish people can rise above centuries of pain, but only if they choose unity over pride and collaboration over division. Do you think true peace is possible between different cultures living in the same land, or is separation inevitable? Chapter 12, Working for the Community. This chapter celebrates a simple, powerful idea. The best life is one lived in service of others. Einstein reflects on his own work, not as a physicist for glory, but as a human being devoted to the betterment of mankind. He sees every contribution, big or small, as valuable if it uplifts society. Whether it's inventing a new theory or planting a tree, the goal is the same: leave the world better than you found it. He criticizes modern society for its obsession with fame and personal gain. In a world of me-first ambition, Einstein says we've lost sight of collective well-being. He urges us to measure success not by money or recognition, but by how many lives we touch, how many problems we help solve. Einstein was a scientist, yes, but he was also a humanitarian. He worked for civil rights, peace efforts, refugee aid, and education for the poor. He saw no contradiction between studying relativity and fighting injustice. Science to him was only useful if it served people. He also believed that helping others makes us better people, kinder, humbler, and more connected. Giving is not a sacrifice. It's a form of self-discovery. This chapter serves as both an encouragement and a challenge. Einstein is not asking us all to be heroes. He's asking us to be useful. And in doing so, to find joy and meaning far greater than comfort or wealth can offer. What's one small thing you could do this week to make someone's life better? Chapter 13, My Credo. This final personal declaration is Einstein's ethical compass, his answer to the question, "What do you believe in?" Einstein opens by declaring his disbelief in a personal God or afterlife. Yet he is anything but nihilistic. He holds a deep reverence for life, for the structure of the universe, and for the eternal mystery that lies behind everything. His worldview is grounded not in faith, but in awe. He speaks of humility in the face of nature, a sense of sacred wonder that fuels both science and spiritual reflection. This is what he calls cosmic religion, the feeling of being part of something vast and intelligent, yet unreachable. He doesn't need a heaven or a divine reward. Understanding even a sliver of the universe is enough. Einstein also shares his guiding values: simplicity, justice, truth, and compassion. He strives to live modestly, work honestly, and never hurt another person. He rejects nationalism, dogma, and materialism. Instead, he places his trust in reason, kindness, and quiet courage. His credo is not loud or self-righteous. It's gentle, like the man himself. It's a call to live thoughtfully and selflessly, to seek truth without arrogance, and help others without expecting reward. This final chapter is not just a conclusion, it's a legacy. Einstein's life was guided by these principles, and he invites us to shape our own creed based on reflection, not reaction. If you had to write your own life credo in one sentence, what would it be? And there you have it. Albert Einstein's world, not just as a physicist, but as a philosopher, a rebel, and a humanitarian. From science to spirituality, war to peace, individuality to community, Einstein didn't just ask big questions, he lived them. His reflections teach us that life isn't about chasing status or stuff, it's about staying curious, staying kind, and using your mind to serve others. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Einstein's thinking, don't forget to like, comment, and share what resonated most with you. I read every comment, and I'd love to know which part of Einstein's worldview challenged you the most. And remember, if you've ever dreamed of starting your own journey as a thinker, creator, or entrepreneur, the Entrepreneur's Launch Kit, a practical guide to making your first $10,000, is still available. People just like you are using it to build real digital income through YouTube, freelancing, digital products, AI tools, and more. You can grab your copy right now using the link in the description, bio, and comments. Start today because your future self is waiting. Until next time, this is Zuzu, the book reader, bringing books to life, one idea at a time.